Okay, boys and girls, today we are going over how to clean your bearings and re-lubricate them. The main bearings that you are going to want to do this the most often to are definitely your hub bearings. The reason why is if you run in, of course this is off-road truck, you're going to be running dirt, sand, water. Water is a big enemy, rust. You're going to want to check them to make sure they're spinning freely. I'm going to go over what I have found is the best way to clean them. What is the best way to re-lubricate them. The bearings that are used in RC vehicles are not completely rebuildable. They have rubber shields, so the rubber shields can be taken off both sides, and you can remove the old oil and any debris that may be in them. Check and see if they are seized. If it's seized, you need to replace it. And just, this is basic RC maintenance that you need to do. You have to do, unless you want to continue paying more and more. This is maintenance. It's just like with the actual vehicle. You have to rebuild the hub bearings on an actual vehicle, because the grease gets dirty. It gets dirt in it. The grease degrades over time. But with bearings, you can use marine grease, but I'll go over why I don't do that. Some people do that. I'll go over why I wouldn't do that. It's called something as, it's known as parasitic power loss. But the things you're going to need is, of course, a way to take off your wheel. I do not like this stock tool that is given. It is not that great of a tool. You can't get a lot of torque. It hurts. I'm probably sounding like a pussy. But you just can't get really good on it, and because these are in so deep, you can't get it real good, so you have to do it like this. And as you can see on mine's damaged because, I mean, you have to take the wheels on and off to do maintenance. So what I suggest is, okay, where'd you go? I suggest a 17mm socket. That's what size what size nuts these are. They're 17mm. This is the nut. I've already taken the wheel off, but you see it fits perfectly. I'll even put it on the front and show you it locks in place. You're going to need that and a ratchet or a breaker bar, whatever you choose. I choose a ratchet because, of course, you can do that. So once you get your wheel off, you're going to want to put it up under the vehicle. Take the clip off. I already started a video and then I didn't realize that this is take 4 because I've already had a couple screw ups. My first one didn't have enough battery, second one didn't have enough memory, third one I can't remember what happened, but this is my 4th take. So that's why I've already removed this clip. This is the clip that goes right here that holds the hex on. When you're removing this, make sure you cover it. So, because this is spring loaded. If you take this off, it's going to fly. And these aren't really needed, but they are very nice to hold the hexes on. These are spline shafts. Eventually I am going to get the hot racing metal hexes because plastic is not going to last, especially with the amount of power that I'm putting down now. My spiral cut gears will be coming today, so I will be doing a video on them. But first, of course, you remove the clip and then you remove the hex. Also in this video, I'm going to go over all the cleaning agents. What you can use to clean, what's the best use to clean, and then what you would want to use to re-lubricate them. The best thing would be some type of thin oil, bearing oil. I prefer a Marvel Mystery Oil because it is it can be used for pretty much anything in RC when it comes to light lubrication. You can use, silicone. It's waterproof. You can use grease. I don't like to use grease because it causes something known as parasitic power loss. I'll get into that a little deeper as we get into the video. But let's actually start getting done and get into it. And so first, of course, you're going to want to remove the hex and the clip and make sure everything's free. My CVs have balloons on them. Well, boots that are made out of balloons. These screws are 2mm, but I always prefer to use a drill. Do not use a drill to put it back in because you will strip the plastic. You're going a steel screw into plastic, so you'll strip it unless you have a very loose clutch. Even with mine set on 1, I have stripped some plastic. So after you get the screw out, you need to push the pin out, which is very simple. It just comes right out. And we're going to re-grease that before it goes back in. And then the hub just drops down like that. And now you can see there's a lot of dirt. So you're going to want to pull your bearings. There's the outer bearing. And you can see there's some grease coming out of it. Well, some oil. And from the front side, push out the larger bearing in the back. I can actually feel there is some debris in these bearings because it doesn't grind. I mean, there's sort of a bit of a grinding. The reason you want to do these a lot because I don't know if I've mentioned this one in this take yet, but with the hubs, they're the closest to the ground. This is an off-road vehicle. Even with on-road, you're going to encounter dirt, water, sand if you run in sand. Biggest thing, water. If you run in water, you're going to want to do this pretty much after every bashing session because water is going to get into these unless you're running a marine grease or something that is waterproof. You're going to want to do this daily. Definitely if you're working inside your house, the cleaner I recommend is brake parts cleaner. It is a very strong alcohol. Quickly removes tough brake fluid, grease, and oil, and it dries very fast. But when you're using this and it is a spray, you definitely want to use some safety glasses so you don't get it in your eye, and because this can blind you. So safety glasses go on. Okay, these bearings are not completely rebuildable. You can just remove the rubber shields. Inside the rubber is the rubber is impregnated with metal. So it's not just rubber. It is a piece of metal with rubber surrounding it. These are not any special bearings. These are Traxxas stock bearings. You can get ABEC 5, ABEC 7 bearings. You really don't want to use... Do not use ceramic bearings on the hubs because if you get a grain of sand inside of this, it is going to destroy the ceramic ball bearings. I don't know exactly how many balls are inside of these larger bearings. I will count them once I get it apart. But in order to take the shields off, you're going to need a needle or something very sharp. And just get up under it. You got to work at it. And using a needle is a little tough because it is a small instrument. But you'll get it. It just takes a little time. See, they can be a pain in the butt sometimes. My X-maxx shields come right off. These are a little tougher. It'll probably help if I have a damn, where are my needle nose? Oh, there they are. Needle nose pliers to hold the needle probably help. See, I got it somewhat that time, but it didn't come completely out. Needle bent. These are some tough shields, but as you work with them, they will come off. It just takes a little while. Okay, I had to pause because I will admit the Traxxas has done a better job with the shields on each side, especially on these bearings that are the larger but thinner. It is very tough to get these off. You're going to need a thicker needle that can take some pressure, but you go in from the inside, push it down in, and then pry it out, and it'll just come out just like that. And now you can see that the shields are taken off. I actually did both bearings. The larger bearings are easier to do. And now we will count how many bearings are in these. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Usually there's an odd number, but I'm going to count again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Okay, so these smaller but larger the ball bearings themselves are larger, but the outside diameter of the outer race is smaller than the other ones. So as you can see, they are a little bit smaller. The amount of bearings inside this one is these actually look like this metal the metal spacer could be taken out, and these could be completely rebuilt. I don't have any extra bearings, so I really don't want to try that. I'm just sort of poking at it to see. Let's try a different tool. Okay, yes, these can be completely rebuilt. The bigger ones can be completely rebuilt. All you do is, from the side that you can actually see the ball bearings, push them out, push the spacer out, and then get all the bearings to one side. Don't only do this if you know what you're doing, because putting the bearings back in is difficult. The amount of bearings in this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 bearings in the larger, but the ball bearings are smaller, so you need more bearings, more balls to for all the load. They are smaller balls. These are ball bearings. Some of the early Traxxas vehicles actually used bushings, and I actually have some. It is from a old Rustler, Let me see if I can get to what I need to get to. A lot of extra wheels, parts. There we go. I'm going to get it and then take it to the light. I'll put all that stuff up when I'm done. But early Traxxas vehicles actually used a brass bushing. They were replaced with ball bearings. Ball bearings work better than a brass bushing because there is nothing there. All you have is a harder metal on a softer metal. The brass bushings wear out, they have to be replaced. If you take care of your ball bearings, clean them, lubricate them, they will last longer. Okay, so now we need to get to the part of removing the old oil debris. As you can see with these bearings, there's races on each side, so these aren't rebuildable like these are. The inside spacer can be taken out and each individual bearing can be taken out, but honestly, if you're gonna need new bearings, replace it. Don't try to replace the balls. There's one time when I was skateboarding, I took every one of my bearings apart and I mixed all the balls together. Each bearing has specific balls for it that were made for that bearing. I tried to put them back together and then found out, oh, okay, well, there's 2 bearings per wheel, so that's, and there were 7 bearings in each, so 14 times 4, 6. It's early, so excuse me, 56. So that would be 56 balls, and then I would have had to go back through and figure out which balls go to which bearing, because I would put them back together with the 7 bearings and they wouldn't spin because I had the wrong bearings and the wrong balls and the wrong bearings in the wrong races. Inside a bearing, of course, you have the balls, the inner race, and the outer race. That's why they are called ball bearings. You have linear bearings that have, instead of a ball, they have it sort of looks like a pin, and those also work like that. Bearings in a actual engine for a full-size vehicle are not like this. They do not have ball bearings. They are actually a flat piece of metal that are softer than the crankshaft and camshaft. They both use bearings, but they do not spin. 2-stroke engines, however, do utilize ball bearings because they do not have oil pressure like an actual car. That's why oil pressure in a car is so in a full-size, I don't know why I'm getting off to full-size cars, but oil pressure is so crucial in a full-size car because the oil pressure sort of levitates the crankshaft between the bearing and the crankshaft itself. There is a liquid, amount of grease that goes around it, amount of oil that goes around it that's pressurized, and it's always renewing itself and getting filtered. So, but that's why you need good oil pressure in a real vehicle. In 2-stroke and nitro engines, you actually have ball bearings because the oil, you don't have oil pressure. You have oil that is built into the fuel. It's usually 5 parts fuel to 1 part oil. So now you're going to take the bearing and take your cleaner, get it down inside. If you're going to do this inside, definitely put a towel down. Even if you're working on hardwood floor, you do not want to get this alcohol on the floor because this is a very, very strong alcohol. And we're just going to want to make our way around. cleaning the inside. On the next bearing, now that I figured out how to get the races out, I'll show you how, because I will admit they are tough. Now what you're going to want to do here is do both sides like that, and this is simply removing the grease, oil, whatever you want to call it. And as you can see, there is some alcohol building up in the bottom of that container. It will evaporate away. You can use acetone carburetor cleaner. I have found this works the best because not only does it clean very well, but it also dries very fast. These bearings are already dry. That's how fast this evaporates. Now, to get rid of everything, on the side where you can actually see the bearings, hold the inside race and use the pressure to spin the bearing up. See, so you can actually hear the bearing spinning right now. That's because I used the pressure to spin the bearing up by hitting the balls themselves, and it just causes that to happen, and the centrifugal force will expel the debris. So I'm going to do that twice. And you can actually hear it. Once it spins very freely and you don't feel any sort of locking up at any point, you have removed, and it squeaks a little. I don't know if that can be heard. But once that is done and the bearing spins freely, very freely like that, you have removed the oil and the debris. I mean, you can do it a third time to make sure you got everything and run it in reverse from the other way you were. And it spins it up at a pretty intense RPM. You're also going to want to clean your, don't use a very strong cleaner on this. With this, you just basically want to wipe it down. Maybe use a little just to loosen up the oil. And then that's, I mean, that one's done. You can see the metal is nice and clean, and I'll compare it to a dirty one. You can see this one is dirty. Where it may have gotten bent from removing it, just lightly bend it back, because like I said, this is rubber with a piece of steel in the center of it. That's why these can be removed. Comparing to this bearing right here, these metal bearings are not, the shields cannot be removed. So when this bearing goes out, you toss it. Same thing if you are running bushings. Once there's a lot of play, you toss it. So I got this one done, and I cleaned the, you're going to want to, like I said, clean the shield as well. Definitely don't use acetone or anything that can eat through rubber on the shields, because then they will not seal back into the grooves. Inside of these bearings there are very small little grooves that these fit into. So now I'm going to do my second bearing. You can see that it will not spin freely. That's because there's oil in there and probably some debris. So we do the same thing. Did that side very well. Now do this side. Now the oil is removed. Now again, put it down in here and spin it up. Spinning it up like that, the centrifugal force will help expel the debris. Because this is cold, because it's compressed, and also it's alcohol, it will evaporate very fast. Like, it's already off my finger. It can cause frostbite if you're not careful. So do the same thing on the other side. And now you can see again, this bearing is spinning freely. There is nothing that feels like is catching, so everything has been removed. Now we get to, okay, what am I going to lubricate it with? Well, I have 4 different things that you can use. I prefer Marvel Mystery Oil. It's very good. It's a thin oil. Works great in bearings, because bearing oil is not all that thick. I really like this, but this is not water resistant, so I don't use this. This is a lubricant and a penetrant, but it's water, and it's basically based off soy. So I mean, this is good for some parts, but definitely not where water's going to be. Grease, if you want, you can pack them. When you pack it with grease, you put a good amount of grease in, and then you rub them like this to pack the grease in. Don't just put grease on it. You want to pack the grease into the bearings. So what you would want to do is, I should show how to do it to get it done proper. Well, yeah, I'll show it. I can clean it, but basically, if you choose to use grease, put some in the palm of your hand like this. Make sure you have a towel to wipe off the excess grease, and then put it in and push down. And see how it's pushing it through? It pushes it into the bearing instead of just pushing it onto the bearing. I mean, you can do it with your thumb, but you want to push the grease into the bearing. This is probably what I'm going to do. I'm probably going to use grease. And this is a good marine grease, waterproof. Make sure you get it. Okay, I've re-cleaned the bearings. Got all the marine grease out of them. And you can actually see, I don't know if you can see it very well, but there is a blue tint to the alcohol that was in this can. There's still some left, but that's about how much alcohol is in one of these cans. A lot of it turns to fumes. That's why you want to work in a well ventilated area. I have windows open and a fan going, but as you can hear, the bearings are spinning freely, so that means there is no oil or grease inside of them. Same thing with the smaller bearing that is to the outer side of the hub. Now, what you're going to want to do if you're using bearing oil is go ahead and install one of the you want the oil to stay inside of it, so go ahead and install one of the shields. And then with Marvel Mystery Oil, and you're going to need some type of dropper. You can get a little medicine dropper or anything like that. Syringe if you can get it. I basically have a big syringe that this is all I use this for, is for this Marvel Mystery Oil. That's all this syringe is used for. I will take the cap off like this and pour a tiny bit of Marvel Mystery Oil into the cap. And then using the syringe, suck up the Marvel Mystery Oil. And then refill the cap, because you want a, you don't want a lot. Ah, crap. I need to do this quickly to make sure that I can get... Okay, it didn't soak through to the carpet. Okay, so we move that back over there. Races back over here. I mean bearings, shields, bearings right back here. So now I have the syringe full with 5 milliliters. Well, I'm going to fill it up a little more. So now there's 5 milliliters. Shit. 5 milliliters of Marvel Mystery Oil in here. Actual bearing grease comes with a very thin metal tip, so you can get, it's a tip about that long that is basically about the diameter of a thick needle, where you can get little tiny drops into it, which is basically what I do with this. So now I just put drops of oil into the bearings, and be very liberal with this. You want a good amount of oil in your bearings. Once you see that it is full, it will actually fill up because the rubber will seal one side. Just keep dropping drops in there until the space between the two races becomes filled with the oil. And I can tell with this because, well, actually the race isn't working completely to seal it. But now there is oil in the bearing, which will work as a lubricant. And this is actually what I use on my X-maxx, which is a nitro, and I use this on my on-road cars. And you're also going to want to put a little bit of oil on the shields themselves. Because the metal is going to rub against the shields. And that is how you add oil to it. So I hope these videos help. But that's how to re-oil bearings, how to clean them and re-oil them. So, hope these help. Peace.